Today in Columbia, South Carolina, the Confederate flag still flies over the state capitol, and people by the thousands are protesting. But away from the media spotlight, in another South Carolina town, protesters are fighting what they say is yet another vestige of the Old South. Only this time their target is more than just a symbol. It is the single largest private employer in the state, the Savannah River site. Located just outside Aiken, South Carolina, Savannah River has played a vital role in making this nation's nuclear weapons, its nuclear fuel, and also in storing its radioactive waste. But some black workers at the plant are now charging in a class action lawsuit that they've had to endure not only the worst kind of racial slurs and job discrimination, but also a management that has assigned them to jobs with more radiation than white workers. The Savannah River site holds some of the most dangerously radioactive substances on Earth. The weapons are no longer made here, but the workers still do process and store radioactive waste and materials. The plant is owned by the U.S. Energy Department, but is run by the private Westinghouse Savannah River Company. That firm was owned by the old Westinghouse Electric Corporation, which bought CBS in 1995 and sold Savannah River last year. Some black workers at Savannah River are so upset with what they charge as racial discrimination that they've hired City Attorney Ivan Smith to help represent them in the class action lawsuit they filed in October of 1997. And Smith himself quickly learned how passionate some people around Aiken are about Savannah River.
I received a couple of death threats at my house.
You mean in New York?
In New York. I received 2 telephone calls saying, if you come back here, nigger, we'll kill you.
But Smith went to Aiken just the same, and in June of 1999, the threat was almost carried out when he stopped for lunch on the outskirts of town.
I start here, and I don't know what made me look up, and I see a car coming. And then I noticed that he's coming right at me. And so I jumped, and I hit his hood, and I heard him say, nigger, get out.
Smith wound up with a broken nose and 11 stitches.
I think if I didn't see him, I'd be dead.
Savannah River now employs about 14,000 workers, 20% of whom are black. Joseph Buggy is president of Savannah River. I understand you have a zero-tolerance policy here at the plant when it comes to racial intolerance, be it discrimination, racial slurs, correct?
That's correct, Mike. Zero tolerance. We don't stand for that type of behavior at all at our site.
Let me give you a sample of what some black workers have said under oath. White managers have addressed black employees as boy in a racially offensive manner. One section of the plant was called the Coon area. I'm sure you know about this.
I've heard of that. That's unacceptable behavior on the site.
Even with the zero-tolerance policy, one white worker thought nothing of using the N-word in Joe Buggy's presence. What'd you do?
I dressed down, chewed out might be a better word. I made it perfectly clear to those individuals that that's unacceptable behavior on my site.
But he wasn't suspended. There was no penalty beyond the dressing down.
That was a conversational that I heard in passing. It wasn't a confrontation thing.
When there's a company that will allow employees to openly use that word and you do not take serious action against that, then you're saying to the rest of the employees, you can call me a nigger one time and get away with it. I don't think that's acceptable.
These workers, all of them plaintiffs in the lawsuit, say they are not impressed with the plant's zero-tolerance policy.
Well, I walked in the bathroom and they had my name on this, on a piece of cardboard tack wall. Said, nigger, watch your back, we're gonna kill you, beware. And then it had signed KKK. Well, I reported it to my general foreman, and they told me that it was probably, since it was written in the bathroom, that it didn't mean nothing, that it was probably just a joke.
28 years ago, they just called you boy. But today, they'll call you the N-word.
Until Phyllis Calhoun Hurley quit her job and joined the class action lawsuit, she ran the Westinghouse Diversity Program at Savannah River. In your opinion, was the Westinghouse Corporation interested in helping minorities advance?
No.
In fact, Hurley says her boss once told her that a white worker would be better suited for a new management job because he was white.
What they said to me was, this is an opportunity to have a white male in the job, and
Because he's going to be able to pacify the white workers.
right. That's exactly right.
Black employees at your plant have been discriminated against in salary, in promotions, in job security, in job assignments.
Mike, I can assure you, there is absolutely no discrimination, nor has there been since we've been here, against any group or class of our employees.
But the U.S. Labor Department apparently disagrees. When several black workers complained about being demoted unfairly, federal authorities investigated, and in 1997, they ordered Westinghouse to compensate financially 7 of those black workers. The Labor Department said later they could find no further race discrimination, but their investigation was limited, and they did not look at most of the years covered by the lawsuit.
Since we've been here, we've increased minority participation in our professional and management ranks by 25%.
If so, black workers want to know, why are they not better represented at the top levels of management? How many vice presidents do you have?
Vice presidents? 16 or 17.
How many vice presidents are black?
1.
Actually, as Mr. Buggy later acknowledged, the correct answer is none. Aiken's mayor, Fred Kavanaugh, who used to work at Savannah River himself, says he doesn't know what all the fuss is about.
And I want to make this point. I never saw the types of things that you just described, the racial slurs, the taking advantage of the African American versus the white or Hispanic or anyone else.
Mayor Kavanaugh says he knows very little about the lawsuit, even though last year more than 1,000 people marched past his office and through the streets of Aiken in support of the black workers. If I may, how can the mayor of the city know so little about a lawsuit that involves so many of his constituents?
Let me just say this.
How many black citizens are there?
Oh,
in
we've
this town?
probably got 30% of our population. And you know how many that have called me on this issue? One.
Who's that?
Mr. Hightower.
Weller Hightower.
Mr. Hightower.
I love Aiken. It's where I grew up, went to school here, and I know the people real well. Aiken's been good to me.
Willer Hightower is the only black member of the Aiken County Council. He, too, works at Savannah River, and he's a plaintiff in the lawsuit. What's been the reaction of your fellows who sit on the council with you?
Quiet. Absolutely nothing.
I have heard that even some parts of the black community here are reluctant to support your class action lawsuit.
That's correct. Some were just flat out scared.
When Willer Hightower tried to advertise a march on behalf of the black workers in a local NAACP magazine, it was turned down because Hightower refused to remove accusations against Westinghouse.
The local organization is so concerned about inflaming the power structure.
Don't rock the white boat.
That's exactly right. And the House has given the state chapter money, so they don't want to clip the string on that money.
The NAACP denies this. But the lawsuit's most serious charges involve accusations that plant management put blacks in jobs that expose them to more radiation than white workers. Jimmy Walker was working around plutonium one day when a warning alarm sounded. In other words, you'd gotten some
plutonium.
in your lungs.
Yes.
In your nose.
Yes.
In your mouth.
Yes.
Scared?
Yes. Scared to death, not knowing how to deal with this or what to think, because I was new in this process and I was never told that much about plutonium.
Walker says he was told he had nothing to worry about. And it wasn't until 10 years later in 1988, just before Westinghouse took over Savannah River from the DuPont Corporation, that Walker was told he had received so much plutonium that he needed to receive special monitoring. In fact, it turned out to be one of the highest exposures in the plant's history. 10 years later,
10 years later.
they called you in
Yes.
and told you you had received a lifetime dose of radiation, so you shouldn't take it anymore.
Right.
In other words, they put you in a safe job then?
No. No.
What do you mean, no?
I was placed right back into area to produce more plutonium.
Jimmy Walker, who had received numerous awards from the company, says that for years he tried unsuccessfully to get a permanent job away from all radiation. But the management would agree to only temporary transfers, though they did try to limit his overall exposure. Walker finally retired at the age of 42 for medical reasons, having received nearly twice his lifetime dose of radiation. Do I understand that you now, when you urinate plutonium?
Yes. Plutonium will be in my body even after death.
Jimmy Walker, J.J. Walker. You know who he is.
Mike, and I would like to discuss Mr. Walker, but as a result of rules of the court and for reasons of personal privacy, I just can't discuss any individual person's circumstances associated with his case.
But in court papers, Westinghouse said Walker cannot prove that any of his ailments, including headaches, high blood pressure, and heart problems, were caused by radiation. Mr. Buggy points out that white workers have had their share of accidental exposures as well. And besides, he adds,
we don't keep people in jobs that they don't want to stay in. We just don't do that. We closely monitor
well, in the case
all
of Walker, apparently you did, unless he's lying.
I can't comment on Mr. Walker's.
Fact is, James Walker produced for us several internal Westinghouse memos documenting his efforts to get a job away from radiation. Once, after Walker was moved temporarily to a safe job, he was ordered back, which disappointed a Westinghouse manager who told Mr. Walker, quote, "You did a superb job for us. What I do regret is that we work under this inflexible system that doesn't always let us do the right thing." Was race a factor? Walker believes it was. Among the reasons he cites, on the day he received his plutonium exposure, a white man working next to him had also been exposed. And yet that white worker, according to Walker, was eventually promoted and moved to a safer job. Westinghouse denies the man was moved to a safer job. To try to prove a link between race and radiation exposures, black workers commissioned this study of job assignments at the plant, done by Dr. James Ruttenber, a former epidemiologist at the Federal Centers for Disease Control. And he found that from 1991 to 1998, job placement practices at the plant put blacks in jobs that have higher radiation exposures than whites.
That gentleman is a so-called expert on the plaintiff's side. Experts disagree over numbers all the time.
That may be so, but Dr. Ruttenber is apparently so well thought of by the U.S. Department of Energy, which owns Savannah River, that they are currently paying him to perform another study at another nuclear facility. Dr. Ruttenber examined 5 different building areas, and as each building grew increasingly more dangerous with more radiation, the percentage of black workers went up, he says, while the percentage of white workers went down.
Yes, I understand. I don't know. I disagree with those conclusions.
In court papers, Westinghouse cites their own expert, saying blacks did not get more radiation than whites, and they say that Dr. Ruttenber's methodology was flawed.
These are highly sought-after positions. People apply for these jobs, and they're all voluntary positions.
But the black workers say that is not exactly so. They do apply for production jobs, some of which are in radiation areas and some of which are not. But they say it is the management that puts them mostly in the radiation jobs, which offer no extra pay for hazardous work. Production worker Moses Myers insists the time has come for change.
We want something done about it. It may not ever help me, but we sure have children's. And we would never want our children to go through the same acts that we have to go through daily. Now, we're not going to bend over. We're not going to run. We're going to stand.